Okay, so we're going to work on the pulmonary circuit, and basically the pulmonary circuit means to take blood from the right side of the heart out to the lungs, okay? And so basically, then it will be exchanged, the CO2 blood for the oxygen, and then bring it back to the left. All right, so to do driving blood is what we call this. Basically, we're going to start with the IVC, the inferior vena cava, and that's going to come up here. That's step number 1. The blood's full of CO2 from all your organs, and now it's going to go into merge with the SVC, and so that's step number 2, and in comes the blood to the right atrium. So when you write this out, like the renal subcircuit, you actually have to put where the blood goes, and so that is step 3, the right atrium. And now once blood gets into the right atrium, it's going to push the valves down, and basically the blood's going to go into the right ventricle. So from step 3, the right atrium, now we have to list the tricuspid valve because the blood actually pushed it. And so anything the blood touches in the inside, the big structures like the valves, then we have to list that in our driving blood system. And so now after the tricuspid valves, the blood is then going to go into the right ventricle, which is step 5. And then the blood's going to push open the next valve, which is 6, pulmonary valve. And then the blood goes up the pulmonary trunk, which is step 7. And anytime you use the word trunk, it always means artery. So the brachiocephalic trunk or artery is another example of when they use trunk. It just means a very large artery. And so pulmonary trunk is going to split at the top, and that's number 8, right and left pulmonary artery. So here comes the blood with all this CO2, and now the pulmonary artery is going to go through the capsule of the lung, and immediately it's going to split. So now this becomes like the renal subcircuit. So basically number 8 is the left pulmonary artery that I'm taking in. And now, number 9 is the segmental artery. The big ones that were in the kidney that went straight up and down, that were vertical like this. And so basically, that's number 9, the segmental arteries. Then the segmental arteries are going to branch and become like the lobster claws. And so basically, those are number 10, the lobar arteries. And then the lobar arteries are going to branch again and get smaller. So this is number 11, interlobar arteries, okay? And then all the interlobar arteries are going to connect, and they're going to make the McDonald's, like McDonald's arches. And so in the kidney, we call those the arcuate artery. So that is number 12, okay? And so now off of number 12, we've got the big, long, straight highway. Number 13, which is interlobular artery. Okay, and so there it goes, and it comes down here. And now, number 14 is the arterial. So this is a very, very extra small artery. And the arterial I drew as little broken lines right here. And then the arterial is going to become the fenestrated capillary, which is green. So 15 is the fenestrated capillary, right here and right here, okay? Now, I put red blood cells in my capillary that are full of CO2. It's full of CO2, the black stuff, the nasty gas. And basically, in the middle of the capillary goes around and surrounds an air sac. And so inside the lungs right here, we have a bunch of air tubes, bronchioles, and they all end up in little bitty air sacs. And so the air sacs are called an alveolus. And this is what this structure actually exchanges the gases. And so it holds all the oxygen that you just breathed in. And so here's all the O2 in the middle. And so now this is what's going to happen. As the blood cells, the red blood cells go around the capillary, CO2 is going to move from the capillary first. And so it's going to go through the wall of the capillary, goes through the simple squamous cells of the air sac, and then the CO2 comes in here, and the oxygen is going to move out. And so every time CO2 comes in, oxygen turns around and goes back out, diffuses back out. So it goes from high to low. CO2, whatever is in the blood cell always has to move first. So CO2 is going to go from the capillary into the air sac, and then oxygen is going to move out and replace that CO2. And so what holds on to the CO2 and the oxygen? Hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is going to hold on to the gases. And so then as the red blood cells keep moving along, they're full of oxygen because they just got rid of CO2, and then you're going to breathe out the CO2. That's a respiratory function. So it's a very simple system. And then once the red blood cells they're full of oxygen, then they're going to go into number 16, which is the venule. And you'll notice that basically all the arteries are in blue because they're full of CO2, okay? And so once they turn red, that means they're always color-coded for oxygen. And so basically, that's what the two colors mean. So it's the opposite of what you see in the systemic system, all right? So the arteries are going to carry the CO2 in the pulmonary circuit, and then the veins carry the oxygen. All right, so basically the three blood vessels that essentially turn the blood around. The three blood vessels are the arteriole, which is extra small. The capillary does all the exchanging. The capillary does all the exchanging of gases, food, hormones, and waste. And then the venule makes it turn around and go back out. Right, so those are the three most important, three smallest blood vessels do the most important function. And I would say the capillary is the star of the whole system right here, because only capillaries do all the exchanging, right? Do all the exchanging of the gases, the food, the hormones, and the waste. So now, once we're in the venule, which is number 16, then we go back down. It's just like leaving the kidney. Number 17 is interlobular vein, okay? And then the interlobular vein is going to come down, and it's going to go and catch the arch right here, the arch, and that's 18, arcuate vein. And then we're going to go down the interlobar veins right here, 19. And then we're going to go down the lobar vein, which is 20. And then you're going to get into the big segmental vein, and then you're out. And then you're out. And so this is 22, left pulmonary vein. And then where does the left pulmonary vein go? Into 23, the left atrium. The end of the pulmonary circuit. But basically, there's also a right, remember the right pulmonary vein has to go behind the heart, and then it's going to dump in right above this lower left pulmonary vein. So you've got two left pulmonary veins, but the top one comes from the right side of right-sided lungs. So once the blood is back into number 23, the left atrium, that is the end of the pulmonary circuit.